Good evening, everybody. Tonight, local bat enthusiasts Hester Schwarzer and Ellen Ravkind are going to introduce us to the wonderful world of bats. They both have a background in education. Hester earned a double major in education and environmental science, and she taught elementary school for 3 decades. In retirement, she continues teaching children and adults on various nature topics. Ellen earned her doctorate from the UT Health Science Center Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, Department of Physiology. I had to practice that for a long time. Um, she's worked at River Legacy Foundation now for the past 10 years, and in 2017, she became its public programs manager and an environmental educator. Hester and Ellen are excited to tell you lots of interesting stuff about this wonderful creature. So I'll let them get started.
And I want you to know that I've loved everything out of doors since I was a little kid and teased the bumblebees and caught the lizards and climbed trees. And Ellen, sitting beside me, has been involved with so much nature study for so long that she's the expert. But I'd like to give you a little overview of some things about bats. First of all, look at these two little guys. These are bats from that world that have been rehabbed by a very special lady. Amanda Lawler is a person that I think so much of her life is a challenge to all of us. In 1988, she found a little bat in Mineral Wells on the sidewalk that was injured. She had no clue what to do, but she didn't want to leave it there and see it die. She went online, she went to vets, did research, she went to the library. There wasn't much out to tell her what to do with this poor little critter that was still hanging on to life. But through a lot of study and a lot of trial and error, 3 years later, by 1991, she was able to publish a little book, a very small one, called The Bat in My Pocket, because this little bat had gone to work with her in her pocket, gone home with her in her pocket, and she had cared for it until she got it to live with just the information she was able to get. That beginning in Mineral Wells led to her later buying out one of the buildings in Mineral Wells in order to keep them from destroying a huge amount of bats that were in this old building that was going to be sold, and the bats all destroyed. That led to Bat World. And with Bat World, I met her and was able to go into that building and see how they were working with the little bats that other people had brought in that needed to be helped one way or the other, a broken wing, an injury of some kind. Through the years, she has not only become an expert, but she has taught so many other people to do the same thing. We now have extended, she now has extended, she's in Weatherford now. She has fairly new building. They have other things that are going on, but bats from throughout the world have wound up with her learning how and then teaching others how to care for these little guys. We have now bat worlds in Bulgaria, Italy, Japan, Austria. There's one called Mid Cities Bat World, which is in Plano and Arlington, this Mid Cities area. There's also one that came up in 2024 that's called Cross Timbers Bat World, and that was in Springdale. Also, today I just read that there's also now one in Argentina and another one, and I'm not sure the location of that other one, but they are spreading. And the training that goes out from this little endeavor of Amanda Lawler has been instrumental in saving thousands of little bats throughout the world and big ones as well. This shows how they found them in so many buildings, older buildings, the attics, the crawl spaces become a little safety spot for bats to go. Again, please, Frank. Before this, something happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Maryland Tuttle got interested in bats, and in 1982, he started Bat World International. And then in 1986, when Austin became so panicked with the bats on the Congress Street Bridge, and they had this huge discussion in Austin of how to get rid of them. And he moved his operation to Austin. And we're so glad he did, because he became the ambassador for not only Texas, but all of the country in trying to save a very important economically critter. And Texas is the battiest state in the union anyway. There are 47 bats that are native to the continental United States. 33 of them live in Texas. And not only do they're 33, but it is the most numerous because of the huge amount and the Congress Street Bridge, other bridges throughout the state, but even more in caves. Most of you have heard of Frank Advance. Most of you have heard of Bracken Cave. Bracken Cave was owned by the Murbach family for many, many years, and they took good care of that area. But then they decided to sell it. They sold it to Nature Conservancy, Bat International, and even the city of San Antonio went in on it. And it's very close to San Antonio. When I go to San Antonio, it's like 5 minutes before you get to the edge of town. That is the biggest in the world bat colony. They spend their winter otherwise, but come spring, they come up from Mexico, Central America, and they come there as a maternity colony, and they have their babies. They all have one, and they spend their time there. And if you want to go and see it, you're welcome to do so. There is no sign at the gate. There's no way of knowing it's there, but you can sign up in advance. I've been a member of Bat World International for years, and every year I would get my van full, and we would go down and we would sit on the side, on the rocky hillside, and we would wait for the evening. And as it got a little bit dark, you would see them begin to spiral out of the cave. They don't get caught in your hair. They're not going to hurt you, but they would be so numerous and so close above your head that you hear the air current as they flew out. They even show up on radar. They are so numerous. It's such a huge amount. You'll also see the circle of life, because you'll see hawks that are having their dinner and they'll snatch one out of the air. You will see some of the big snakes that are over on the rocky side, and I've watched them curled up there waiting for one to get close enough, and they'll have one for lunch. So they go through the night out into the sky, and it would be amazing to follow them because they catch the air currents coming up from Mexico. And on those air currents are hordes of moths. Many of the moths that are important with the cotton crops, the corn crops, are come in mass numbers on those air currents. And the bats intersect those currents, and they enjoy a huge meal. We don't think about them with mosquitoes that much, but they can eat 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. That's a lot of mosquitoes that they can do away with. About 70 to 80% of the bats in the world are insect eaters, but not all. Frank, next one. Not only are bats in caves, under bridges, in trees, but if you're lucky, you can put up a bat house. And I want you to look at the bottom of this bat house. These little guys are hanging upside down, and I bet you couldn't count how many little bats are in there. Now, Ellen's going to show you, when we get to the end, some good bat houses and some things,
bat houses,
and some that are not as good. The bats don't usually go to a bat house if they've got a good location otherwise. But it's been interesting to see what happens with bat houses. Fort Worth Nature Center put one up. It was 6 years, nothing came. And then they moved it a few feet away, and guess what? Within a year, they had some bats coming to it. Here's one, Frank, the next one. This one was successful. If you look at the top of the building, under the eave of the house, you'll see a little light-colored box. This is in the hill country. And guess what? We don't know why, but it fit the bats just fine. And within very short period of time, the bats had inhabited it. It was close to a water supply. It was the right height. It was facing the right direction. So we'll go with that information a little bit. But you may not be that lucky, but if you want to try, I've got a bat house that you can have. Somebody left it at my door, and you're welcome to have it. I don't have a good place in my yard for it. Frank, next. Here's the thing. There's a huge fear of bats. Chiropphobia, chiroptophobia. How about that? We've got fears of all kinds of things, spiders and mice and everything. Well, there is definitely a fear of bats. I lived in Pueblo, Colorado, and one summer I remember the street lights were on very short poles in that neighborhood. And at night, the bats would come out to eat the moths that were circling those street lights. And everyone was so afraid of rabies or getting bitten by one. Dracula, think of the stories. They got their baseball bats out and they tried to hit the bats so that they could get rid of these dangerous creatures. There are myths in every civilization about bats because they're kind of mysterious. And many of the myths are darkness, bad, evil, witches. And yet there are areas where it's a much more positive. If you think about China and Japan, there's more positive than negative ones from there. But in much of Europe, it was a fearful thing. Back in 1332, a very important lady was burned at the stake because she was seen in her yard with bats circling her. They thought she had to be killed. So there are myths throughout the world, and most of them are just somebody's tales. But the story that Dracula and those bats, that was a good one. It has had a lot of travel throughout the world. There are three of the vampires. This one, he looks kind of evil. Look at his little face with those two little teeth sticking down. Now, look at the next one, Frank. This one looks more like a little cuddly guy. Well, there of the three bats that are vampires, two of them are more interested in fowl. The other one is more interested in large animals like cattle and horses. They don't suck your blood. What they do is they cut a little slit and then they lap up the blood that seeps out. They have to eat a lot of blood. They have to eat ever frequently because they actually can't live very long without their little blood supply. They're not known to be much of a problem with people. And guess what? We don't have them in the United States. Although one was found July 24, 1976, one was found in an abandoned train tunnel in South Texas, and he was 450 miles northwest of where they are found in Mexico. So you don't have much fear of a vampire getting us here in Texas. Frank, next one. What does happen to a lot of bats, and this is kind of sad, if you went to the Laosan market on market day, this is what you might find. A big batch ready to be taken home and cooked. In part of the world, bats are a delicacy. In some, they are a survival food. Bushmeat is an important source of food for many of the people in some countries. But the sad thing is, there is a reason for some of them. If you think about the big fruit bats, if you had an orchard and they were destroying your fruit, you might not want them. You might think that the only thing you could do is kill those and eat them rather than protecting your fruit by some other means. Frank, next one. There are two major classes of bats. Actually, there are four, but they're two big ones. One is the fruit bats or the big flying fox. They come in different sizes, but I think mostly of these huge ones. These guys have a wingspan depending on which one we're talking about, up to 5.5, 6 feet wingspan. Huge things. Frank, go to the next one. And notice that wing out. And then the next one. This one really does like a flying fox. Just turn him upside down and he looks like a little fox. So there we have it. Love them, eat them, try to get rid of them, or fear them. And we know that these guys plant a lot of trees. They're very important economically, but also some farmers or orchardists need to protect from them being overdone. Okay, go to the next one, Frank. And then the smallest. These cute little guys are, well, look at that finger with that tiny little guy sitting there, a wingspan of 5 or 6 inches, and they just look like a little tiny toy. And that's our small bat. Okay, next. And guess what? 35 years ago, they said they had counted 925 different bats. Well, guess what? The number now is 1500. This guy here was announced by Bat International September 30, 1925. He is a brand new guy. He was found in equatorial Africa, one of the islands in South Africa's Equatorial Guinea. And he's our last one, but he won't be the last because there are other islands that have not been explored to the extent. And so this is just the last one. They are the most numerous of the animals. Can you imagine? Yeah. 16,000 different ones. And now I have a series of slides, and I'm going to have Ellen take over now because these are Texas bats, and she's going to give us some introduction into where they live, what they do, and then some studies that are going on. I could go on and on about these bats, but it's Ellen's turn, and you have free rein to ask her questions.
Okay, so let's see what the next slide is. Next one, please, Frank. Okay, see,
Next one.
Yeah, we can.
There's the first one.
And I am not exactly sure which bat this is. This is one from Bat World Sanctuary. They have a host of animals that are non-releasable. Some of them are from Texas, some of them are not.
Well, this one is from Texas. They assured me. They just failed to get the name of this particular one. The rest we have identified.
So next, please. I don't know which one that one is either.
I think that's the palette, is it?
No, it's not the palette.
Well, anyway.
The ones I'm most familiar with are the ones that are in this area.
There we are.
What's interesting, a silver-haired bat, one of the things that we have done and that I have learned is we were trained by Bat Conservation International to be bat ambassadors. And as a result, we learned about a special device I will show you later. It's called the Echometer Touch 2, and it allows you to be a citizen scientist, and it helps you to identify the bats that are out flying. The silver-haired bat is one that we have detected, though not very frequently, in the River Legacy area, also possibly out at Sherry Capehart. Now, what's interesting about the silver-haired one, as well as the hoary bat, which you'll see one later, and our eastern red, is you have heard of the wind turbines. Those are 3 of the species, especially the hoary bat and the eastern red, that have had mass fatalities because of the wind turbines. Partly it's because they migrate at the time of year that the wind is more stronger. The turbines are moving more. They migrate as groups. They're not single solitary animals. And there are actual collisions with the blades of the turbines. But the other thing that gets them is it's a barotraumatic injury where they get into an area of low pressure, which causes the blood vessels in the lungs to burst and rupture. And so they have fatalities without actually encountering them. So the silver-haired bat is one of those that has, I think it's about 16% of the ones that travel through have fatalities with that. So next one, please. The big brown bat, I have not detected here with mine, but it is a very common bat. All of these are insectivores. When we have detected any of our bats here, they come out about 15, 20 minutes after sunset. So that's about the time to find them. And these are one of the larger bats in the area. And I have not personally encountered them.
This is an interesting one, and there's two Texas big brown bats, one east of 35 and one west of 35, which is kind of interesting. Seems like I-35 divides East and West Texas into various groups, and this is one that has a slightly different bat on each side of that divide. Kind of interesting.
It is that's your division.
Yeah.
Next, please. This one is interesting because look at those ears. This bat, as well as the pallid bat, uses echolocation, but not completely for its hunting. They use their sound location to listen to insects, scorpions, centipedes crawling on the ground. So they use some echolocation as mainly to avoid obstacles, but this Raffinesque's big-eared bat will swoop down and get closer to the ground to hear the prey and scoop them up. The pallid bat actually hunts on the ground. It can take off from the ground. And there is a nature PBS show on Big Bend that has a wonderful night video of a pallid bat emerging, crawling on the ground. They catch scorpions, centipedes. They are immune to the scorpion venom, and they can actually take off from the ground. Their ears are very important for that hunting style. And this one, apparently, when it's not hunting, kind of closes the ears down. It helps to maintain the moisture in the bat, because in the arid regions, just like the jackrabbits, with the heat, that disperses a lot of heat. And I have never actually encountered one of these.
Yeah, me neither. Next, Frank.
The southern yellow bat, we have southern yellow bats. They're a little south of where we are. We have detected the northern yellow bat. And what's interesting about them is you see them, they will roost in the palm fronds. And their ranges are expanding a little bit because of the warmer weather. They will also roost in some of the other plants, deciduous plants, and even in some Spanish moss. And in fact, Kate Rugroden from Bat World Mid-Cities has a non-releasable northern yellow bat who gave birth in her hand. They are absolutely beautiful little bats. I think I've only detected a northern one a couple of times on our outings, so not very common here, but they can be found here.
Next.
Now this one and the long-nosed bats are major pollinators, especially if you, for the agave, if you like tequila, mezcal, these are the bats that help to pollinate the plant. They're more in South Texas. I've never encountered them here, but there is the Batman of Mexico. They talk about the long-nosed bat was very critically low numbers, and they are making a comeback, which is exciting for that.
Next.
The evening bat. Now this, of all of the bat programs, and we try and do, and we'd love to have you come. We do family bat program in April. We're trying to do another one in September. When we go out, this is the first bat that we detect about 15 minutes after sundown. They are early evening hunters. The place that we find them here is along Margaret Drive over in the city side of the park. If you walk across the bridge from the Nature Center, you have Snyder Creek, you have the open area, you also have the streetlights for the insects, and these we actually get to see flying and catching the insects. So I love these little brown bats. This is probably, or the evening bat, which is a little brown bat. But the evening bat is the most common bat that we have detected here at the center.
Next. Wrong way.
Now, the eastern red is also one we've detected here. We've seen that at Sherry Capehart. This bat does not go into bat houses. This bat will roost in leaves of deciduous trees, hanging in the leaves, even when she has her pup, and she's a solitary bat. Now, you might think, well, this is kind of crazy because she would be very visible, but no, they perfectly blend in because the leaves are all different colors. These bats will have up to 5 pups. Most bats will give birth to 1 pup. And think about this, all of you mothers out there, that pup on birth can weigh about 1/3 of the mother's body weight. And for about a week to 2 weeks, she carries that pup with her. She's not ready. They're not ready to be left alone. And if you think about Bracken Cave as a maternity cave, and there are 20 million freetails, they each have 1 pup. And after about 2 weeks, they can leave the baby up hanging while mom goes off feeding. And that mother can find her own baby out of those millions of bats through scents as well as sound. Kind of amazing. But this eastern red can give birth to up to 5 babies at a time. And one thing they'll do, I don't know if you like stories or you have kids, there's a book that I'll show you later. It's called The Little Red Bat. This bat will hang by 1 foot, and sometimes when it gets colder, when it goes to switch feet, it will fall out of the trees and it will bury itself down in the leaf litter. So you guys all know that leaf litter is very important for a lot of like fireflies, some of our moths, our little animals to overwinter. The eastern red can be found down in the leaf litter. So if you have them in your area, be very careful if you are moving any of the litter, because you might have a little eastern red bat in there. They are larger. I only saw one. I grew up in the Northeast, and we had the little brown bat was the most common one. And one time we had this big red bat was flying around in my bedroom, and I had never seen one that large. Bright red, has about 1 foot wingspan. So they are all the way up and down the East Coast. Beautiful little bats, but can you imagine 5 pups at a time? So next, please.
No, wrong one.
Now the Seminole, this is a bat that we have also detected in the area, and their range is changing. These guys will mainly roost in Spanish moss, but they are starting to spread into the area. We have found them at both Sherry Capehart. We have found them in River Legacy Park. So they don't have to use the Spanish moss. They can use clusters of leaves or different foliage for roosting. They're all insectivores, and I have usually detected them maybe half an hour after sunset. So these are beautiful little bats that are starting to become more common in our area. Next. The hoary bat. This is one of our largest bats, and it has dark fur where you see the tip is white, and it gets its name from hoarfrost because that's what the bat looks like it has. It is it is one of those that is the most afflicted bats from the wind turbines because of the migration patterns. And this bat too will generally give birth to twins, but up to 4 pups at a time. And We have some of these. Kate from Bat World Mid-Cities has several that are non-releasable. They are just beautiful, beautiful little animals, and we have detected those here. So next, please. I'm trying to give you guys an overview on things. Now, the tricolored bat, this is an interesting little bat. I had never detected them before. We had a program just before the pandemic in mid to third week in September, and Ann Aldifer and I were going out with our echo meters, and we got 50 recordings of tricolor bats. We'd never had tricolor bats before. And so the first thing I did was call Kate. Is this real? Because the way the echo meter works, it gives you a couple of possibilities. So yes, it is real. These bats are one of the first ones to go into hibernation, and that was also their mating season. So they were very busy little bats. Now, these bats, you've heard of white nose syndrome. White nose syndrome started up in New York. It is from a fungus called Pseudogymnoascus destructans. They call it PD, and probably came over from Europe. And it showed up first in the little brown bat. Now, those bats hibernate. They have long hibernation periods and in damp, dark caves. And it turned out that researchers were noticing that there were a lot of dead bats on the ground, and they had the white on their nose, they had on the wings and on the tail. There was the presence of this fungus. And what that does is it's an irritant. It's like you get a mosquito bite, or you have something where you wake up and you have to scratch it, and then you go back to sleep and you wake up and have to scratch it. Well, that's what happens to these little bats. And normally they would sleep through the cold weather for several months, but they kept getting aroused from the presence of that fungus. And what happens is when spring came around, they didn't have the energy. They could not hunt. So they died. Now, the spores have been from spelunkers, from people not understanding. The bats migrating, the ones that are close together, has caused the spread of the PD. And it is now in Texas. This is the bat. Approximately 90% of the population of this little tricolored bat is been decimated by white nose syndrome. They will hibernate in the darkest, dampest part of a cave and very dense, so many together. So that is the ideal way for spreading. Through contact, through the saliva, it is a horrible, horrible thing. Texas Parks and Wildlife is now deciding whether to put them on the endangered species list as endangered. So these bats are just suffering. I mean, think of the little brown bat. There were well over 6 million of those bats. And that's kind of a number that I understand is a magic number. Too many more, and people don't understand that. So this little bat is becoming very, very uncommon. So I'm not going to focus anymore unless you want to add anything on that. Next, please. This looks like one of the little yellow bats that we saw. This one was not actually labeled, but it's from Bat World. And
if you go to Bat World Mid-Cities, you will see this little guy as one of their icons on their advertisement. And I just thought he was so cute. I had to put him there.
I think they're all pretty cute. Next, please. Oh, Mexican free-tailed. I love these bats. I know you love these bats. They're the ones that are in Bracken Cave. This is your official state flying mammal of Texas.
And Oklahoma.
And Oklahoma too. Okay. And these bats are, they're interesting to detect, because when they come out to go hunting, they tend to come out from the cave and go up very high. They can go up to about 10,000 feet so quickly that unless you're at Bracken Cave, it's hard to get a good recording on your echo meter from the Mexican free-tailed ones. They're one of the bats that you might get into your bat houses. And when they migrate up from Mexico, the females are pregnant. When you think about it, the females are pregnant when they do that. And think how much extra energy they need to do that. And they're just, I mean, you can tell why they're free tail. You can see the little.
Yeah. If you're in some parts of South America, you probably would be calling these Brazilian freetail. It's the same guy. It's just different authors they will name them either from Brazil or Mexico, depending.
Exactly. But they are some that we do detect here, but they are very.
And I want to tell you that every summer, I live not far from River Legacy, and I sit out at night, and right after it begins a little bit dark, I usually see 2 or 3, and I wish I knew which bat they are. They don't get close enough, I can, but they'll go to the tops of the oak trees, and they will fly around right there in the canopy for sometimes 15, 20 minutes. And then they always head over my house, heading east. I would give anything to have a little tracker on these guys and see where they spend the rest of the night before they come back. And I don't know if they are tree dwellers or if these are in somebody's shed or a cave or even a bridge, who knows? We've done studies to see which ones are on the different bridges in our area. Years ago, I helped with a study. I don't know how long it went on, but I finally realized that it wasn't my cup of tea because I couldn't go where they were going. But we did not find any major bridges in this part of Texas, even though there are other bridges throughout the state that you'll find them, as well as so many of the caves. All over Texas, there are caves and mines that will have these guys. That is the last of the ones I wanted you to see. I'm going to turn this computer out of the way so Ellen can show you stuff now. So Frank, if you want to turn it so Ellen can just show pictures.
Yeah, I just have a few things that I would like to show you guys. One is the skeleton of a bat. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh.
Look, there we go. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
You can see that. Now, if you look, that kind of almost looks like a person, but think about, what's a tail? Think about those are what we would call our hands. The little projection right up there is the thumb, and these are the fingers, and this is the wings. It is pretty amazing to look at these animals. And the hoary bat is one, you saw a picture of it, has some fur on its tail, and it can wrap itself up to help keep itself warmer. So I love to show you the skeleton of the bat. There you go. It's kind of hard to show up. Now, this is the device I have been talking about. This is from Wildlife Acoustics. This is the Echo Meter Touch 2. You can put it on that. They have it for Androids as well as iPhones. It has a little microphone. You can see that. And you attach it to your phone. I'm not going to turn it on. And there is an app that you put in, and you put in the bats that are found in your area because they have them from all over the world. And what this does, and I will try and do that, is, bats use echolocation. And so the echolocation is above our hearing, it's ultrasonic. Now, this little device through the app will take this echolocation sound, little bits in real time, and puts it down so that we can hear it. And you get a spectrogram where you can see the chirps and you can hear it, because each bat will send out, it's like little pulses of sound. when they're hunting. And that helps them to find the moths, the mosquitoes, whatever they're after. And as they get closer, you know, it bounces back. And as they get closer to their prey, the signals come faster. And ultimately, if it catches it, you hear a little raspberry and then nothing. So you know the bat has actually eaten the moth. Now, when they're out there flying, you know, bats don't fly like the birds in nice straight circles. They're very erratic flyers. And so you can have this, the pulses, the sound comes louder, it gets softer, and you can sometimes even detect it without seeing the bat. But what this will do is it will give you, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. Oh no, can you? Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try it. Now I'm going to play this. I don't know if you can hear it, but if you ever come visit me, I'll do it for you here. Can you hear the chirping?
Not really.
Okay, well, it's what you hear is the chirping. What you still will be able to see is it will give you a possible, well, I'll tell you, it gives you a possible ID. Like this one for that type, for the frequency, the duration was either an evening bat or a Seminole bat. And then you can learn about the bat with it, but it will also, like this was out at Sherry Capehart, it will show you a map of where the bat was flying. So you can see where it was going. And all the bats that you pick up during your recording session will show up on here. You can then also get a satellite view. And when you have everything ready, you can get a summary of what bats you have detected, where they have been. And it's fun. Like this, Hester, you should borrow this because if you're in your backyard and you see the bats,
Maybe I would know.
you
That
might
would
be
fun.
able to detect what this is.
Yes.
So this is a wonderful little device to be a citizen scientist. This, I think they still have it for it's about $179. And it's pretty impressive to see what it can do. The other thing I wanted to show you guys is with bat houses, there's good bat houses and where I'm going to take more questions and bat houses. This one, if you look at it, look at the size. And if you can see inside, not very well, it's 2 chambers, but it's all like a plastic screening. And you see there's nothing that hangs down here because bats cannot just fly up into a bat house. They have to have what's called a landing pad, which this one has. Hold this back. See, this one has a landing pad where they can land and crawl up into the house. It is also rough. It's all wood. That plastic mesh will deteriorate over time. So it's not that's also not good in that respect. This one, you have ventilation holes because especially, you know, in Texas, it can get very hot. And nowadays, they've kind of changed both Bat World Sanctuary and Bat Conservation International. This is a single chamber house, but they're putting out information that the multi-chambered houses, the slightly larger ones, are generally more successful. In Texas, you want to have it either southeast or the east side because it's so hot here. You want to have it about 15 to 20 feet off the ground on the side of a building or on a pole. You do not want them in trees. There's too much shade. That's too easy access for many predators coming up the tree. And you want them light colored up north. You might want to paint them darker so they absorb some more of the heat. But if you ever want to build your own, they have specifications on all of these sites. They tell you you should be near a water source, like you already talked about, have some open area. There's a gentleman that lives near the intramural fields at UTA across field, or it's in an old neighborhood. He has a pool. He has 2 bat houses now up on a post. There's also big old beautiful trees there. His houses are full of bats. It is so cool to go over there
really?
because we have Ann Aldiver and I have, she knows him, have gone over and we've been able to detect them, and it is amazing. So never give up. Sometimes you can have the most perfect conditions and the bats don't move in. Other times they will definitely
Yeah.
move in, and because of the guano, plant a garden underneath, because then you'll be have self-fertilizing your plants for the bats. I
Your book.
yes, oh yeah, here's my little book. This I love, there's a lot of bat stories. Stella Luna is very popular, but I love this little one. It's called The Little Red Bat, because how many people think of bats being nestling down in leaf litter? And these guys do, and it's a beautiful little book, and it is one of our local bats. And there's there's just so much we could go on. Though I have seen an interesting video, which is one I would never even think of it, because bats have a lot of predators. This was recently recorded in Germany. There's a brown bat that was caught by a rat. This rat was sitting up on the windowsill of a building, and they have it on video where the bats are flying around, and this rat grabs the bat out of flight. So, that's not a predator that I would ever think about for bats. So I don't know if it's an evolutionary thing, but it's kind of a disturbing video.
You get a you get a pet, like a little gerbil or something, and it lives maybe 2 years and that's it. Bats are the one that proves that you can't trust anything in nature to be the way you think it's going to be, because they've have one bat particular that they banded it. It was already an adult, and guess what? 31 years later, that little bat showed up. They saw its little tag. 31 years later, we don't know how long it lived because it was still alive and released, but we know they can live up to 40 years.
Yeah.
So if you have a little bat friend, not like your puppy dog, that bat may be around for a long, long time. And some of them that are in bat world will be there the rest of their life, and they've already lived many years in a perfect little residence because people care enough about these little guys. And I think if we think back to Marilyn Tuttle, who started Bat International, and how one man with a passion moved to Texas and got Austin so excited that they fell in love with the bats, and how Amanda, because she fixed one little bat's life, how many thousands of bats and how many thousands of us as adults have gotten pulled into this. So valuable little bit of wildlife. And I was so glad that Ellen was able to fill you in on some of our very, very special little ones. If you have some questions, I bet she knows the answer, and I doubt that I do.
But we can always research. But one little bit of kind of trivia is Kate has her own population of non-releasable bats. They know her. If she goes out of town or has to leave, where she has to have someone come in and feed her bats for her, she has to take each bat, introduce the bat to the person that is going to be feeding it, and then let that person feed the bat in her presence. Isn't that amazing? They know her. They are, I don't think that we give them as much credit for just the brain power and just, I just find that was one of the most interesting things I ever saw, that they know her, they trust her. And if you're leaving me, then I need to know that whoever's going to feed me, I need to trust them too.
Marion, do we have any questions that we need to deal with?
You do. There's one from David Hopman. He asks, could you address the idea of bringing back large municipal bat houses like we had in DFW in the 19th and early part of the 20th century?
Personally, I think that's an incredible idea. Though I know when I first moved to the Arlington area, there was an Eagle Scout who had set up some bat houses in a park in the Dallas area. And the mayor at the time was so freaked out because of rabies that he made the Eagle Scout take them all down. I think there are some areas where there are large bat houses and they have gardens underneath them. I know in Texas, I can't think of where they are offhand, but rabies, as any mammal, is definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
But in bats, it's less than 0.5% of all the bats could be rabid. And Kate and all of the ones, and she's the one I know best, so I talk to her a lot about things. She has only had 2 bats in her whole career, which is a couple of decades, that have been rabid.
And one thing you need to remember that if you are working with a bat rehabilitation group, you have taken preventative measures
Right.
so that you're not going to get rabies. And the caution to everyone is never pick up an injured animal, not just bats,
Yeah.
but any kind of little animal or bigger animal. You protect yourselves. Huge, thick gloves, big blanket or something to cover that with. You don't trust that it's not going to give you rabies,
Because it's
even though it's, like she said, that's a very small percentage and we don't have much. But I remember 30 years ago, I guess it was, and I was working at a ranch near Austin, and a skunk bit a horse. They didn't realize it later. Thank goodness, someone had captured that skunk and it got tested and it did have rabies, but they didn't realize the horse had been bitten enough that the horse died also. So it's there. We need to be careful, but it's very rare.
But I think if you're ever going to have large bat houses in an urban area, we need a lot more education because there's so many people that just would.
Yeah.
It's.
But do you think it's dangerous if you have because I mean a large bat house can have 4 or 5 million bats in it, and they don't have to be that big, 20 feet tall. And there's pictures of them from Dallas in the 1920s. They actually had these big bat houses before they started spraying all the chemicals.
Well, that's worse in the long run. But where I grew up, we didn't have large bat houses, but on the old farmhouse at the top of the hill, we had the shutters. And every window, especially, actually most sides except for the north side, we had little brown bats behind those big shutters, hundreds and hundreds of them. And you can hear them chittering. And we never, I mean, we never thought about it. But I don't think I'd ever start with bat houses that large. Maybe smaller ones where you could have the garden there and people would be, but I think you need a lot more education.
Yeah, so maybe
Although
it's
it's
better
getting
to
better.
just spread it around rather than trying to have it be a municipal
Yes.
function. Yeah.
Okay. Grace asked, is there an evolutionary advantage to having the tail free of membrane?
I do not know that. There's not many that do have the free tail.
Yeah.
I do not know that, honestly. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, some of them, if their tails were there separate, it would be in the way because they curl their lower membrane up to hold the insects as they're eating them in the air.
Yeah, because they
So
bend it up.
the tail would be in the way.
Yeah,
And
I
most
do
of them
not
don't
know.
have a tail.
I
That's
won't even try and answer that one.
We don't know.
Okay. And David, I don't know if he had asked about 7 toes. Was that on the free tail bat too? You thought you saw them, or you were just kidding
never
around?
counted.
Oh no,
the
there was it looked like a hand with 5 toes, and then there was 2 more. It looked like there were 2 more appendages sticking out.
I have never been that close to count their toes, but
Well, it was one of the pictures. I think it
Yeah,
was
I
on a
remember
brown bat, and it looked
seeing
like it had 7, but it may have been some kind of a wing flap or something. I'm not sure, but anyway.
yeah, I'm not sure about that. But
Okay.
Interesting.
Mary Morrow says there's an Elm Fork chapter bat project acoustic monitoring plans to have bat walks in 2026 to begin with at our project sites, and then we'll branch out to parks, etc.
Exciting.
So
Yeah, we have, if you are ever interested, I always try and have a program with Kate. She comes and does about a 45-minute presentation, and then we go out with our echo meters to see what we can find here at River Legacy. And I know we always have, or at least for several years, we've been able to go out to Sherry Capehart as well and see what we can detect. I mean, I love doing bat programs, and I love getting, because there's so many. Think how many species, think how many habitats there are. Think about the different types of food. They might be insectivores, but some like the moths, some will do the mosquitoes. There is just a never ending amount of information we can learn with and curiosity. And I'm hoping with what Hester and I did today, it gets you excited about looking to see what's in your area and what we can learn about it. And you can plant plants in your gardens, night blooming plants that might attract bats to your yard. So there's a lot of things that you can do to help them. And it's just, I don't know. I've learned things all the time.
there's a lot to learn, right? How close do the boxes need to be to water? I know we have a lot of bats in my that's hard to say, neighborhood.
Rural.
Rural-ish, well, they added the ish at the end. Several neighbors have a lot of ponds, but none are super close. That's from Pamela.
What I read, and I checked the website before we had our program, because I know they've been talking more about multi-chamber bat houses, that about a quarter of a mile. It could be about a quarter of a mile away. And I've heard some will even go to bird baths. There's videos of bats at bird baths. So there's a lot of flexibility. The ones here that we see, we usually find them not as much at our pond, but along Snyder Creek in that open area and along the road is where we usually detect them.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mary asks, a study at TCU says bats prefer pools over ponds if it is stagnant or not healthy looking. They drink swooping down and take a sip, and up they go, so the chemicals don't have an adverse effect on the bats.
Well, that's why the house over near the UTA intramural fields, he does have a pool right there. And I mean, he had one house that was full, and I guess there could be the size of his house. There was probably about 200 or more bats in there. And it was so successful, he put one on the other side. So there's one on each side of the pole, and that one's now full too. And so we saw them dip down to do the pool too.
That's cool. Grace says, so our north central Texas bats are all insectivores, but are there some species that are specialists for a particular bug, or will they all feed on mealworms?
No.
The ones the ones in rehab, like the permanent residents, pretty much all of the rehabbers that I know and that Kate supports on her permit, mealworms. They will eat the mealworms. The younger ones, they will have different kinds of formula for them, but mealworms.
The pollinator ones would be a little harder.
Yeah, lots of different
to
kinds
make
of
sure
food.
that they had a food supply. So, and like we said, 70 to 80% of them are going to be insectivore ones, but we don't. But we do have people that are rehabbing the fruit bats, and they do have to provide food
A
for
lot of
them.
different kinds of
And
fruit.
so those, but they're also, there's a small population of two other categories. One of them is the
There's
one that eats fish.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've had any of those in rehab lately. And
I don't think they have
I
one.
don't think at all.
But what's interesting too is the pallid bat, which is found more in West Texas, and Kate has a couple of those. One is named Cricket, one is named Toby, and I've got to admit they're my favorite bats. They are the chatteriest of all of her bats. Not only do pallid bats hunt on the ground, but they will also eat some cactus flowers and things. So they will branch out and they will eat a little plant material too, which you don't think of bats doing
Yeah.
that.
An interesting thing about the rehab, when they're feeding the mealworms, guess what they have to do to the mealworms? They have to make sure that the mealworms are eating the right nutrition
Gut load them.
so that there won't be a deficiency when the little bats all eat the mealworms.
And they have their different ways of eating. There's some that you can feed an individual mealworm, they'll gobble it up. And there's one, I think it was an evening bat that she had. She sets up a little tray of a whole bunch of mealworms. And this little bat dives into it and just goes almost like a smorgasbord, eats as many as he can. And he's not a good flyer. So she has to keep her hand over the top, because as soon as he's done, he tries to crawl up on her finger, hang or fly away. But so the different bats will have their own personality and how they want to eat them. It's just fun. They're very unique. They have personalities, just like tarantulas have personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I say that because we have the Art and Science of Arachnids coming from mid-November through the end of February. And yes, I can tell you a lot of tarantula stories, and I can't wait for Erica to come out.
Next chapter. Anything else, Marion?
Right now, anybody else have any more questions?
Because we're hitting the witching hour.
I know, and I appreciate you guys inviting me to be part of this. I mean, I get very excited. I love learning more and more about them. You know, you can spew all the facts about them, but when you see them and watch their behavior, and you get to talk to rehabbers about how personable they are, I think that's part of what makes them less scary. Is they're not just this flying creature. They have they interact, they fight with each other, they have their best friends. I mean, that kind of makes them so that maybe people won't be as afraid of them.
If anything we've said has excited you, all you have to do is go on Bat World Mid-Cities. They have a list of classes.
Yeah.
You can get involved with taking the classes, and then you can have one of those little guys keeping you company in your pocket.
Well, Ellen and Hester, you could tell people are excited about this subject too, because this is probably one of the biggest attended presentations we've had in a
Well, I'm
while.
excited. Thank you.
So we thank you for
The
coming.
mysterious, wonderful bats.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they're cool. I love them. And we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you too.
And have a good rest of the week.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank you, Frank, for
y'all.
helping us
Thank you.
out.
Oh, yes. Technology couldn't do it without you. No wonder we start so early.
Well,
Thank you
y'all
very
read the
much.
comments, not just the questions in the comments in the chat, because a lot of people are saying how much they appreciated the presentation.
Well, come on out for a program. Let's see what we can find.